The great gates of the Valari Imperial Palace had not seen such confusion in 300 years. Guards in silver armor stood frozen at their posts, unsure whether to draw weapons or bow their heads. Before them stood a woman they had been told was dead for nearly 3 decades, and at her sides walked 2 young strangers with round ears and warm-colored skin that marked them as something other than Valari. Princess Yuna looked older than when she had vanished. Her silver-blue skin had faded slightly, and lines of age touched her face in ways that should not have appeared for another century. But her eyes still held the same light that palace servants remembered from long ago. She stood straight and proud, dressed not in royal silks, but in simple human clothing. Her hands held tightly to the hands of her children. Do-yeon was 18 years old. She had her mother's height and graceful neck, but her skin was a soft brown like her father's had been. Her dark hair fell past her shoulders, and her eyes carried both curiosity and fear as she looked up at the massive palace that touched the clouds. Beside her stood Tae-ho, 15 years old and already broad in the shoulders. He had the same brown skin and dark eyes, and his jaw was set hard as he watched the guards with suspicion. "State your business," the head guard demanded, though his voice shook. "I am Yuna of House Sarah," the princess said calmly. "Third daughter of Queen Sarah, born in the year of falling stars. I have returned home." The guards exchanged looks of disbelief. One of them activated a communication device and spoke rapidly in the formal Valari tongue. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. A crowd began to gather at the edges of the courtyard, nobles and servants alike staring at the strange sight. Do-yeon felt her heart beating fast. She had grown up hearing stories about her mother's homeworld, about palaces made of crystal and people who lived for centuries. But the stories had not prepared her for the coldness in the eyes that watched her now. To these people, she was not a princess's daughter. She was something wrong, something that should not exist. "Stay close," Tae-ho whispered to her. "Whatever happens." "I know," she whispered back. Finally, the great doors of the palace opened. A tall Valari official walked out, followed by a dozen more guards. He carried a small device in his hand, and his face showed no emotion at all. "You will submit to genetic verification," he announced. Yuna nodded and allowed him to press the device against her palm. It hummed softly, and lights flickered across its surface. The official's eyes widened slightly as he read the results. He looked at Yuna, then at the children, then back at Yuna. "The queen will be summoned," he said quietly. "You will wait in the Hall of Ancestors." They were led inside, and Do-yeon tried not to stare at everything around her. The palace was beautiful beyond anything she had ever seen. Walls of pale crystal rose hundreds of feet into the air. Light seemed to flow through everything, soft and silver like moonlight made solid. But the beauty felt cold to her. There were no photographs on the walls, no small personal touches like she had known in her home on Earth Colony 7. Everything here was perfect and ancient and untouchable. The Hall of Ancestors was a vast circular room filled with holographic images of past rulers. Queens and kings of the Valari floated in the air like ghosts, their luminescent eyes seeming to watch the newcomers with disapproval. Do-yeon found herself shrinking closer to her mother. They waited for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Then the doors opened again, and Do-yeon felt her mother's hand tighten around hers. Queen Sarah entered the hall. She was ancient and magnificent. Over 400 years old, she stood taller than any other Valari Do-yeon had seen. Her silver-blue skin seemed to glow from within, and her eyes burned with cold white light. She wore robes of deep purple that flowed behind her like water, and a crown of crystal stars rested upon her white hair. Power radiated from her like heat from a sun. The queen stopped 20 feet away from her daughter. Her face showed nothing. No joy, no relief, no anger. Just ice. So, Queen Sarah said, the dead return. I was never dead, Mother, Yuna replied. Her voice was steady, but Do-Yon could feel her trembling. I was lost, and then I was found. By good people. By humans. Humans. The Queen spoke the word like it was something unclean. Her gaze moved to Do-Yon and Tai-Ho, and Do-Yon felt the weight of those ancient eyes pressing down on her. And these creatures? These are my children, Yuna said. Your grandchildren, Do-Yon and Tai-Ho. Their father was a man named Ha-Jun. He was kind and good, and he loved me more than anyone in this palace ever did. A murmur went through the crowd of nobles that had gathered at the edges of the hall. Do-Yon heard words like contamination and disgrace spoken in harsh whispers. Tai-Ho's hands curled into fists at his sides. You abandoned your blood, the Queen said. You abandoned your duty. You married a creature that lives and dies in the blink of an eye, and now you return with these half-things and expect welcome? I expect nothing, Yuna said. I ask only for help. I am dying, Mother. A genetic condition that human medicine cannot cure. Only Valari healers can save me. I did not come here for myself. I came so my children would not lose their mother as they lost their father. For the first time, something flickered in the Queen's eyes. Pain, perhaps. Or memory. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. You will remain in the palace, Queen Sarah announced. Healers will examine you, but these... She looked at Do-Yon and Tai-Ho again. These will not be acknowledged. They are not of my blood. They are of your blood, Yuna said firmly. Half of what flows in their veins comes from you. You can deny it, but you cannot change it. The Queen turned away. Find quarters for them, somewhere out of sight. She walked toward the doors, and the crowd parted before her like water before a ship. Do-Yon watched her go, this grandmother she had traveled across the stars to meet. She had imagined many versions of this moment. In some dreams, the Queen had wept with joy. In others, she had been stern but fair. Never had Do-Yon imagined such complete coldness. But just before Queen Sarah passed through the doors, Do-Yon saw something that no one else seemed to notice. A single tear fell from the Queen's eye and vanished into the silver folds of her robe. The doors closed, and they were alone. Yuna let out a breath she had been holding and pulled her children close. I am sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry. It's okay, Mom, Tai-Ho said, though his voice was rough with anger. We didn't come here for her. We came here for you. Do-Yon said nothing. She was still looking at the doors where her grandmother had disappeared, thinking about that single tear. There was something there, she thought, something hidden beneath all that ice. She just had to find a way to reach it. The quarters they were given were small and cold, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the palace where dust gathered on the window frames. 3 rooms connected by a narrow hallway, with furniture that looked like it had not been used in a century. Do-Yon stood at the window and looked out at the crystal towers of the city below. Somewhere out there, millions of Valari lived their long lives, and not one of them knew or cared that 2 human children had just arrived in their midst. The first week was the hardest. Yuna was taken away for treatment almost immediately. The Valari healers said her condition was serious but treatable. The process would require her to spend most of each day in a special chamber filled with healing light. She would be weak and tired. She would need rest. Do-Yon and Tai-Ho would have to manage on their own. Stay together, Yuna told them, before she was led away. Stay out of trouble. And remember what your father always said. The right thing and the easy thing are rarely the same, Do-Yon recited. Yuna smiled weakly and touched her daughter's face. My clever girl, take care of your brother. I can take care of myself, Tai-Ho muttered, but he hugged his mother tightly before she left. The days that followed were lonely and strange. Servants brought them food but would not speak to them. Guards watched their doors but pretended not to see them when they walked past. The message was clear. They existed, but they did not matter. Tae-ho handled it with anger. He spent hours exercising in their small quarters, doing push-ups and practice moves from the self-defense classes their father had insisted they take. When he walked through the palace hallways, he kept his chin high and his eyes forward, daring anyone to challenge him. On the fourth day, someone did. He was walking back from the kitchens, where he had gone to get extra food because the portions they were given were too small. 3 young Velari blocked his path. They were tall and elegant, dressed in fine clothes that marked them as sons of noble houses. Their luminescent eyes looked down at him with disgust. "Look at this," one of them said. "The half-breed walks among us like it belongs here." "I do belong here," Tae-ho said evenly. "My mother is Princess Yuna." "Your mother is a traitor who spread her legs for an animal," another one laughed. "What does that make you? A mongrel, a pet?" Tae-ho's fists tightened. He could feel the heat rising in his chest. The urge to strike out, to make them pay for every cruel word. But he heard his father's voice in his head, calm and steady. "Fighting proves nothing except that you let them control you. Be smarter than your anger." "My father was a better man than any of you will ever be," Tae-ho said. "He taught me that people who need to insult others are usually afraid of them. So what are you afraid of?" The Velari's face twisted with rage. He raised his hand to strike, but a voice cut through the hallway. "Enough!" An old Velari woman stood at the corner of the hallway. She was dressed in servant's clothing, simple gray robes that marked her as someone of low status. But she held herself with quiet dignity, and her voice carried authority. "The boy is a guest of the Queen," the old woman said. "Whatever you think of his blood, he is under royal protection. Unless you wish to explain to Her Majesty why you attacked someone in her own palace." The young nobles hesitated. Then, with muttered curses, they walked away. Tae-ho let out a breath. "Thank you." The old woman studied him with curious eyes. "You have your mother's stubbornness. I saw it in the way you stood. You were ready to fight even though you knew you would lose." "You knew my mother?" "I was her nursemaid when she was a child." The old woman smiled softly. "My name is Unbi. I have served this palace for 200 years. I remember when little Yuna used to sneak out of her lessons to play in the gardens. She always had a wild heart." Tae-ho felt something ease in his chest. Here finally was someone who did not look at him with hatred. "She still does. She says that's why she stayed with the humans, because we let her be free." "I believe it," Yunbi said. "Come, I will show you a safe path back to your quarters. And perhaps tomorrow, I can show your sister the archives. She looks like someone who would love books." She was right. Do-yeon did love books. The palace archives were vast beyond imagination. Millions of records stretching back thousands of years, stored in crystal memory devices that projected their contents into the air when touched. Yunbi brought Do-yeon there on the 5th day, and Do-yeon felt like she had found a treasure. She spent hours reading about her mother's childhood. She found official records of Princess Yuna's education, her achievements, her popularity among the common people. She had been beloved once. A bright young princess who smiled easily and spoke kindly to everyone she met. Then came the records of the diplomatic mission that had gone wrong, the pirate attack, the disappearance, and finally the official declaration of death. "They mourned her," Yunbi said quietly, watching Do-yeon read. "The queen most of all, though she never showed it in public. For years after, she would visit Yuna's empty chambers at night. The servants heard her weeping." Do-yeon looked up. "She loved my mother? More than anything in the universe. That is why her heart turned to ice. It was the only way she could survive the pain. That night, Do-yeon told Tae-ho what she had learned. They sat together in their small room, eating the plain food that had been brought to them, and tried to make sense of everything. "So the Queen actually cares," Tae-ho said. "She just hides it." "I think so. I think seeing Mom again, seeing us, broke something open in her. But she doesn't know how to show it. She's been cold for so long that she's forgotten how to be warm." "Great. So our grandmother is an emotional disaster who rules a galaxy. That's comforting." Do-yeon almost smiled. "We just have to be patient. Give her time to—" A knock at the door interrupted her. Tae-ho opened it carefully and found Yoonbi standing there, her face pale with fear. "You must be careful," the old woman whispered urgently. "I have heard things. Prince Hyun, the Queen's nephew, sees you as a threat. He wants the throne for himself, and your existence complicates his plans." "What kind of threat?" Do-yeon asked. "The Festival of Stars is in 3 days. The royal family must present themselves to the people. There are those who want to make sure you do not survive until then." Yoonbi pressed a small device into Do-yeon's hand. "This is a communicator. If you need me, press the center. I will come." She slipped away into the darkness, leaving the siblings alone with their fear. Tae-ho looked at his sister. "What do we do?" Do-yeon thought of her father, who had faced every challenge with courage and kindness. She thought of her mother, who had crossed the galaxy to save her children. She thought of her grandmother, frozen in grief, unable to love. "We survive," she said, "and we prove that we belong here, no matter what it takes." The Festival of Stars was the most sacred celebration in the Valari Empire. Once every 10 years, the royal family stood before the people on the great balcony of the palace and reaffirmed their bond with the heavens. Millions would gather in the city below, and billions more would watch through broadcasts across the 12 star systems. To be absent was unthinkable. To be present was to claim your place in the royal bloodline. Do-yeon understood now why Prince Hyun wanted them dead before the festival. If they appeared on that balcony beside the Queen, it would mean official recognition. It would mean they were family, and that would threaten everything he had been working toward. On the morning of the festival, Do-yeon and Tae-ho tried to visit their mother. They were stopped at the doors of the healing chambers by guards who refused to let them pass. "The princess is in a critical stage of treatment," one guard said without meeting their eyes. "No visitors allowed." "She's our mother," Tae-ho argued. "We need to talk to her." "No visitors. Orders from above." Do-yeon pulled her brother away before he could say something that would make things worse. They walked through the palace corridors, passing servants who were busy preparing for the evening ceremony. Flowers were being arranged. Crystal decorations were being polished until they shone like stars. And everywhere, guards moved in pairs, watching everything. "We can't reach Mom," Tae-ho said grimly. "We can't tell her about the danger. Then we face it ourselves." "Are you serious? Yoonbi said they want to kill us. We should hide." "Stay in our rooms until the festival is over." Do-yeon stopped walking and turned to face her brother. "If we hide, we prove them right. We prove that we're weak, that we don't belong here, that we're afraid. Is that what Dad would have done?" Tae-ho was quiet for a moment. Their father had never been a fighter. He had been a farmer, an engineer, a man who grew food and fixed machines. But he had never run from anything in his life. When the colony faced a drought, he worked for 3 days without sleep to repair the irrigation systems. When raiders attacked, he stood at the front line with nothing but a tool belt and his stubborn courage. "No," Tae-ho admitted. "Dad would have faced it. Then so do we." They returned to their quarters and prepared themselves. Do-yeon chose a simple dress that her mother had packed for her, dark blue with silver trim that matched the Valari colors. Tae-ho wore a formal jacket that had belonged to their father, carefully preserved for special occasions. They looked at themselves in the mirror and saw two human children about to walk into a nest of enemies. "Ready?" Do-yeon asked. "No," Tae-ho said. "Let's go anyway." The great hall where the festival would begin was already filling with nobles when they arrived. Thousands of Valari in their finest clothing turned to stare as the two humans entered. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. Some faces showed curiosity. Most showed contempt. Do-yeon kept her head high and walked forward. She could feel the hostility pressing against her like a physical weight, but she did not let it show on her face. Beside her, Tae-ho moved with the careful alertness of someone expecting an attack at any moment. They found a place near the back of the hall and waited. The ceremony began with music, strange and beautiful sounds that seemed to come from the air itself. Then the great doors opened and the royal family entered in procession. First came the lesser cousins and distant relatives. Then came Prince Hyun, tall and handsome in robes of deep red, smiling at the crowd like a man who already saw himself as king. And finally, Queen Sarah, magnificent and cold, her crown of crystal stars blazing with light. The queen took her place on the high throne and raised her hand for silence. "People of the Valari," she began, "we gather as we have gathered for 10,000 years, to honor the stars that guide us and the blood that binds us." Prince Hyun stepped forward then, and Do-yeon felt her stomach tighten. "Honored Queen," he said loudly, "before we proceed, there is a matter of blood that must be addressed." He turned and pointed directly at Do-yeon and Tae-ho. "Creatures of impure blood stand among us. They claim connection to the royal line. I call for a test of blood to prove their worthiness." A gasp went through the crowd. The test of blood was ancient, rarely used, and dangerous. Do-yeon had read about it in the archives. Challengers had to survive a night in the crystal caves beneath the palace, a labyrinth of tunnels filled with natural dangers and sacred trials. Many who entered never came out. Queen Sarah's face showed nothing. "The test is their right to refuse." Prince Hyun smiled coldly. "Of course, if they are afraid." Every eye in the hall turned to Do-yeon and Tae-ho. This was the trap, Do-yeon realized. If they refused, they would be dismissed as cowards. If they accepted, they might die. Either way, Prince Hyun won. But there was a third option: win the test. Do-yeon stepped forward and the crowd parted before her. She walked until she stood at the base of the throne, looking up at her grandmother's frozen face. "We accept the test of blood," she said clearly. "My brother and I will enter the crystal caves. We will prove our worth. And when we emerge, no one will question our place again." For just a moment, she thought she saw something flicker in the queen's eyes. Fear, pride, she could not tell. "So be it," Queen Sarah declared. "The test begins at sundown." The caves were cold and dark. Do-yeon and Tae-ho were given torches and led to the entrance, a jagged opening in the rock beneath the palace. Behind them, Prince Hyun watched with barely hidden satisfaction. He expected them to die in there. He had probably arranged for them to die in there. "Stay close," Do-yeon told her brother. "Watch where you step. And remember, we're smarter than they think we are." The first hour was simply walking. The tunnels twisted and turned, leading them deeper underground. Strange crystals grew from the walls, some glowing softly, others dark and sharp. The air grew colder with each step. Then they reached the first challenge. A wide pit blocked their path, too far to jump, with no bridge in sight. At the bottom, something moved in the darkness, making sounds that Do-yeon did not want to identify. "Now what?" Tae-ho asked. Do-yeon studied the pit carefully. The walls were covered with crystals, some large enough to grip. She had spent years climbing rock walls on Earth Colony 7 for exercise. This was not so different. "We climb around," she said, slowly and carefully. It took them 20 minutes, moving one handhold at a time, testing each crystal before trusting their weight to it. Twice, Taeho's foot slipped, and Do-yeon grabbed his arm to steady him. But they made it across. The second challenge was a room filled with poisonous gas. Taeho recognized it from his chemistry studies and showed Do-yeon how to breathe through wet cloth torn from his jacket. The third challenge was a maze of mirrors that showed false paths and hid true ones. Do-yeon used a piece of crystal to mark their route, leaving scratches on the floor so they never walked the same path twice. On and on they went through the night. Every challenge they faced, they solved together, using knowledge their human education had given them and the practical skills their father had taught them. They did not have Valari strength or Valari long life, but they had something else. They had each other. As dawn light began to filter through cracks in the rock above, they finally found the exit. A great stone door opened before them, and they stumbled out into the morning air to find the entire court watching in stunned silence. Prince Hyun's face was pale with shock and rage. Queen Sarah rose from her observation throne and walked toward her grandchildren. She stopped before them and looked at their torn clothes, their bruised hands, their exhausted but triumphant faces. "The test is complete," she announced to the crowd. "They have proven their blood." And though her voice remained cold, her eyes held something new as she looked at Do-yeon and Taeho. It looked almost like respect. The servants who had ignored them now bowed their heads as they passed. The guards who had pretended not to see them now opened doors before they could knock. Even some of the nobles who had whispered cruel words began to watch them with curious eyes instead of hateful ones. Do-yeon and Taeho had proved something in those caves. Not that they were Valari, because they were not, but that they had strength, that they had worth. Their quarters were changed too. On the Queen's orders, they were moved from the forgotten corner of the palace to a proper suite near the royal chambers. The rooms were large and bright, with windows that looked out over the crystal gardens. Fresh flowers appeared each morning. The food improved. For the first time since arriving, they felt almost welcome. But the greatest change came 3 days after the test, when a message arrived summoning Do-yeon to a private audience with the Queen. "Just you," Taeho said, reading the message with worry in his eyes. "Why not both of us?" "I don't know. Maybe she wants to start with one. Maybe she's not ready to face both of us at once. Or maybe it's a trap." Do-yeon considered this. "I don't think so. If she wanted to hurt us, she could have done it already. I think she's curious. I think she wants to understand." "Understand what?" "Us, humans. The people who took her daughter away." The Queen's private chambers were unlike anything Do-yeon had imagined. She had expected coldness, formality, crystal walls without warmth. Instead, she found herself in a room filled with soft light and quiet beauty. Paintings hung on the walls, landscapes of worlds across the empire. Shelves held small objects that looked like personal treasures. And in one corner, barely visible, was a holographic image of a young Valari girl with a bright smile. Her mother, Princess Yuna, before she vanished. Queen Sarah sat in a simple chair by the window, watching the stars appear in the evening sky. She did not turn when Do-yeon entered, but she gestured to an empty chair beside her. "Sit," the Queen said. "We have much to discuss." Do-yeon sat, her heart beating fast. Up close, she could see the lines of age on the Queen's face, the weight of centuries in her eyes. This was not just a ruler. This was a woman who had lived longer than most human civilizations had existed, and she had spent almost 30 of those years believing her daughter was dead. "Tell me about your father," Queen Sarah said. The request surprised Do-yeon. She had expected questions about herself, about her mother, about why they had come, not about Ha-jun. He was a farmer, Do-yon said carefully. An agricultural engineer. He grew food for our colony. A farmer. The queen's voice held no emotion. My daughter, a princess of the greatest empire in the galaxy, married a farmer. He was a good man. The best man I ever knew. Good. The queen seemed to taste the word. What does that mean to you? What made him good? Do-yon thought about her father. She thought about the way he smiled when he came home from the fields, tired but happy. The way he sat with her and Tai-Ho every night, asking about their days, listening to their problems like they were the most important things in the universe. The way he held their mother, gently and completely, like she was a treasure he could not believe he had been given. He was kind, Do-yon said. Not weak kind, strong kind. He helped people without expecting anything in return. He worked hard every day to make life better for others. He taught us that love isn't something you feel. It's something you do, every day in small ways and big ways. The queen was silent for a long moment. And when he died? He got sick. The colony doctors tried everything, but the illness was too strong. He spent his last days making sure we would be okay, writing letters for us to open on our birthdays, recording messages so we could hear his voice when we missed him. Do-yon's voice caught. His last words were about Mom. He said she was the greatest gift the stars ever gave him. He loved her. More than anything. Queen Sarah turned to look at Do-yon directly. Her luminescent eyes seemed to pierce straight through to Do-yon's soul. You speak of love as if it matters, as if it outweighs politics and duty and the preservation of bloodlines. It does matter. Love is why we're here. Love is why Mom survived all those years away from home. Love is why she crossed the galaxy to save her children, even knowing she might be rejected. Love is the strongest thing there is. Love is weakness, the queen said, but her voice lacked conviction. I loved my daughter, and her loss nearly destroyed me. But it didn't destroy you. You're still here, and so is she, and so are we. The silence stretched between them. Outside the window, the stars blazed cold and distant, the same stars that watched over both Earth and the Valari homeworld. Finally, the queen spoke again. Your mother will recover. The healers say the treatment is working. Thank you. Do-yon felt tears threatening but held them back. Thank you for helping her. Do not thank me yet. There are those who do not want her healed. There are those who see your presence here as a threat to everything they have worked for. Prince Hyun. The queen's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. You are observant. I've been watching, listening. He hates us. He wanted us to die in the caves. Yes, and he will try again. Hyun has ambitions beyond his station. He believes that if something were to happen to me and your mother, he would be next in line for the throne. Is he right? Perhaps, if there were no other heirs. The queen looked at Do-yon with new intensity. But there are other heirs now. You and your brother. Half human or not, you carry my blood. You survived the test. By ancient law, you have a claim. Do-yon felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. She had not come here to claim thrones or power. She had come to save her mother and to find the family they had never known. But politics did not care about intentions. Politics cared about blood. We don't want the throne, she said firmly. We just want our mother to be well. We want to be a family. What you want may not matter. Hyun will see you as a threat regardless of your desires, and he is not working alone. He has made alliances with foreign powers, powers that would benefit from chaos in the Valari Empire. How do you know this? I am old, child. I have ruled for centuries. I know when snakes move in my garden. The queen leaned forward. But knowing is not the same as proving. Hyun is careful. He leaves no evidence. And without evidence, I cannot move against him without starting a civil war. Do-yeon understood then why the queen had summoned her. Not for a family conversation, not to learn about her father, for help. You want us to find proof. I want you to be careful. I want you to watch. And if you discover something, I want you to bring it to me. The queen's voice softened slightly. You have already shown courage and cleverness. Those caves have killed Valari nobles who thought themselves strong. You are more than you appear. We learned from our father. He always said the measure of a person isn't what they look like or where they come from. It's what they do when things are hard. Queen Sarah studied her granddaughter's face for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched Do-yeon's cheek. Her fingers were cool but gentle. Perhaps, the queen said quietly, he was not entirely unworthy. It was not much. It was not forgiveness or acceptance or love, but it was a beginning. And in this cold palace of crystal and stars, beginnings were rare and precious things. 3 days until the Grand Council. 3 days to find proof of Prince Hyun's treachery before he could act against the queen. Do-yeon and Tai-ho worked in secret, careful not to attract attention. During the day, they behaved like ordinary visitors, exploring the palace, attending public events, and letting everyone see how harmless they were. At night, they gathered information. Tai-ho had found unexpected allies among the younger guards. His courage in the crystal caves had impressed them, and his straightforward manner had won their respect. Unlike the nobles who treated guards as furniture, Tai-ho talked to them like equals. He asked about their families, he learned their names, and in return, they shared small pieces of information. There's been unusual movement near the eastern wing, one guard named Ji-won told him quietly. Messengers coming and going at strange hours, always to Prince Hyun's chambers. What kind of messengers? Not Valari. Foreigners. They wear the colors of the Korvax Federation. Do-yeon's blood chilled when Tai-ho reported this. She had studied the Korvax in the archives. They were a militaristic species who had long coveted Valari territory. A war between the two empires would be devastating for both sides, which was why peace had held for centuries. But if someone inside the Valari palace was willing to make a deal... He's planning to sell out his own people, Do-yeon said. He'll trade Valari territory to the Korvax in exchange for their support. Support for what? Taking the throne. Think about it. If the queen dies and mom is still too weak to rule, and we're just half-breed children with no power, who does that leave? Hyun, the loyal nephew who steps up in a crisis. Tai-ho's face hardened. We need more than suspicions. We need proof. I know, and I think I know how to get it. Her plan was dangerous, risky, possibly stupid, but it was the only way. The next day, Do-yeon approached Prince Hyun directly. She found him in the Grand Library, surrounded by advisors who scattered like frightened birds when she entered. Hyun remained seated, watching her approach with amusement in his cold eyes. The half-breed princess, he said mockingly. Have you come to beg for mercy? No. Do-yeon kept her voice steady. I've come to offer you something. You have nothing I want. I have information, and I have motivation. She sat down across from him without invitation. My grandmother has made it clear that she will never truly accept us. We survived the caves, but we're still outsiders. We'll always be outsiders. But you, she leaned forward. You have power, connections, the ability to change things. Hyun's eyes narrowed with interest. Go on. I know you're planning something for the Grand Council. I don't know what exactly, but I can guess. You want the throne. You're tired of waiting for the old queen to die naturally. And with my mother's return complicating things, you need to act faster than you planned. Dangerous words, little half-breed. Dangerous times. But here's what I want you to understand. My brother and I have no interest in ruling. We're humans. We don't want to spend centuries managing an alien empire. We just want to go home, back to Earth, back to our real lives. But we can't do that as long as we're stuck in the middle of Valari politics. Do-yeon could see Hyun calculating, weighing her words against his suspicions. She had to be convincing. Had to make him believe that she was exactly what everyone expected, a scared, selfish human who cared only about herself. "What are you proposing?" Hyun asked carefully. "When you make your move, leave us out of it. Let us take our mother and go. We'll disappear back to human space and never trouble you again. In return, I'll tell you everything the Queen has said to me in private. I'll help you predict her movements. I'll be your eyes and ears in the royal chambers." A slow smile spread across Hyun's face. "You would betray your own grandmother?" "She's not my grandmother. She's a cold old woman who looks at me like I'm dirt on her shoe. I owe her nothing." Hyun studied her for a long moment. Do-yeon kept her face carefully neutral, hiding the terror that churned in her stomach. If he suspected the truth, if he realized this was a trap, she was dead. Tae-ho was dead. Their mother was dead. "Interesting," Hyun finally said. "Very interesting. Perhaps I underestimated you, little half-breed. Your human cunning might actually be useful." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet and confident, the voice of a man who believed he had already won. "The Grand Council meets in 3 days. At midday, when the Queen addresses the assembled houses, there will be an incident. The Queen will fall. Her guards have been persuaded to look the other way. In the chaos that follows, loyal citizens will rally to the only remaining royal authority, me. And the blame will fall on the human contamination in our midst, your mother and her mongrel children. The people will believe that you brought assassins from Earth space. My Korvax friends will provide evidence. It will be very convincing." Do-yeon felt sick, but forced herself to nod. "And if we're already gone by then?" "Then you'll simply be fugitives, wanted criminals who fled after their crime. It matters little. The result is the same. I need to prepare my brother, make arrangements for transport. When can I contact you again?" Hyun smiled his cold smile. "You don't contact me. I'll send word when the time is right. Until then, play your part. Be the frightened little half-breed everyone expects. And do not betray me, child. The consequences would be unpleasant." Do-yeon rose and bowed her head in false submission. "I understand perfectly." She walked out of the library on legs that felt like water, keeping her pace slow and calm until she rounded a corner. Then she pressed her hand against her chest, where a small human device was hidden beneath her clothing. It was a simple recorder, the kind that colonists used for taking notes in the field. Nothing sophisticated. Nothing that Valari sensors would detect as a threat. But it had captured every word. That night, she met Tae-ho in their quarters and played the recording. His face grew darker with each sentence until Hyun's final threats made him slam his fist against the wall. That bastard. He's going to kill the Queen and blame us for it. Not if we stop him first. How? We're 2 human teenagers in an alien palace. Who's going to believe us over a prince? Do-yeon held up the recorder. They'll believe this. Audio evidence in Hyun's own voice, confessing everything. His plan, his Korvax allies, his intention to frame us. And if he denies it, says it's a forgery, then we show them more. Do-yeon's mind was racing. We have 3 days. You need to find Ji-won and the other guards who've seen the Korvax messengers. Get their testimony. I'll search for documentation, financial records, communication logs, anything that supports what he said. And if we can't find enough, then we present what we have and hope the Queen believes us. Do-yeon met her brother's eyes. Dad always said that doing the right thing doesn't come with guarantees. It just comes with the knowledge that you tried. Tae-ho was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, let's do this. They worked through the night and through the next 2 days. Tae-ho gathered 4 guards willing to testify about the strange visitors to Hyun's chambers. Do-yeon found financial records showing payments from Korvax accounts to Valari companies controlled by Hyun's associates. Yunbi, brave old Yunbi, risked everything to steal a copy of Hyun's private correspondence. By the morning of the Grand Council, they had enough. Maybe not enough for a court of law, but enough for a grandmother who wanted to believe. Do-yeon looked at their collection of evidence and felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever happened next, they had done everything they could. Now it was time to face the queen. The sun had not yet risen when Do-yeon and Tae-ho arrived at the queen's private chambers. Guards blocked their path, but a quick message sent through proper channels earned them entry. They found Queen Sarah already awake, dressed in simple robes, standing at her window and watching the first light touch the crystal towers of her city. "You come early," she said without turning. "The council does not convene for hours." "We couldn't wait," Do-yeon replied. "We have something you need to see." She placed the evidence on the queen's desk. The audio recorder, the financial documents, the guard testimonies, the stolen correspondence. Piece by piece, she explained what each item meant and how they had obtained it. Queen Sarah listened in silence. Her face showed nothing as the recordings played, as Hyun's arrogant voice filled the room describing his plans for assassination and betrayal. When it was finished, she remained still for a long moment. "You obtained this through deception," she finally said. "Yes, you risked your lives. If Hyun had suspected the truth." "We know." The queen turned to face them. Her eyes were hard to read, shifting between emotions that Do-yeon could not identify. "Why? You owe me nothing. You said so yourself. I am a cold old woman who treated you like dirt." Do-yeon felt her face flush. "I was lying. I had to make him believe I would betray you. But why risk yourself for me at all? I have given you every reason to hate me. I rejected your mother. I dismissed your father as unworthy. I looked at you with disgust. Why would you save someone who treated you so badly?" It was Tae-ho who answered. "Because you're family." The queen stared at him. "Our dad taught us that family doesn't mean people who are nice to you all the time," Tae-ho continued. "It means people you don't give up on even when things are hard. You hurt our mom. You hurt us. But you're still our grandmother. And we don't abandon family. Even family who abandons you? You didn't abandon us. You were scared and hurt and didn't know how to deal with it. That's not the same thing." Tae-ho shrugged his broad shoulders. "Humans are good at being scared and hurt. We've had lots of practice. We know it doesn't last forever." Queen Sarah looked at her 2 grandchildren for a long time. Do-yeon could see the centuries of control and coldness warring with something deeper, something that had been buried for too long. Finally, a single tear escaped from the queen's eye and traced a silver path down her cheek. "Your father," she said softly, "must have been a remarkable man." "He was," Do-yeon said. "He really was." The queen straightened her spine and brushed the tear away. When she spoke again, her voice held its familiar authority, but underneath it was something new, something warm. "We must handle this carefully. A direct accusation will give Hyun time to destroy evidence and prepare his defenses. If his Korvax allies learn their plan is exposed, they may accelerate their timeline. We need to trap him in public, where he cannot escape or deny." "How?" Do-yeon asked. "We give him exactly what he wants. The Grand Council will proceed as planned. Hyun will make his move. And when he does, we will be ready." The Grand Council chamber was the largest room in the palace, a vast dome of crystal that could hold 10,000 Valari with room to spare. Representatives from every noble house and every star system gathered on rising tiers of seats, their colorful robes making the chamber look like a living garden. At the center stood the royal platform where the queen would address her people. Do-Yon and Tai-Ho stood at the edge of the platform, visible to all. They had argued against this, wanting to hide until the trap was sprung, but the queen had insisted. "You are bait," she had explained. "Hyun needs to see you in place before he acts. He needs to believe his plan is working." It was terrifying, standing there, exposed, knowing that somewhere in the crowd were people who wanted them dead. Taeho's hand found Do-Yon's, and she gripped it tightly. Whatever happened, they faced it together. Prince Hyun arrived with his entourage, smiling and confident. He caught Do-Yon's eye across the chamber and gave a small nod, as if sharing a secret. She forced herself to nod back. Queen Sarah took her place at the center of the platform. The crowd fell silent. "Noble houses of the Valari," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the dome. "We gather today to discuss the future of our empire. But before we address matters of state, there is another matter that must be resolved, a matter of blood and betrayal." Hyun's smile flickered. This was not the standard opening for a grand council. "It has come to my attention," the queen continued, "that there are those among us who have made alliance with our enemies, who have plotted to end my reign through violence rather than honor, who have conspired to frame innocent members of my own family for crimes they did not commit." The murmur that swept through the crowd was like the sound of waves. "These are serious accusations," Prince Hyun said loudly, stepping forward. "Does the queen have evidence, or is this simply the paranoia of old age?" "I have evidence." The queen gestured, and the recording began to play over the chamber's announcement system. Hyun's own voice filled the dome, describing his plans in damning detail. His face went white, then red, then white again. "This is a fabrication, a trick created by those half-breed creatures to—" "We also have financial records," the queen interrupted. "Testimony from witnesses who saw Korvac's messengers entering your chambers. Correspondence between you and Federation officials discussing the territorial concessions you promised them in exchange for their support." "Lies, all lies." "Then perhaps the Korvac's ambassadors themselves can clarify." The queen nodded toward a side entrance. "Bring them in." Guards escorted 2 Korvac's diplomats into the chamber, their insectoid faces impossible to read, but their body language clearly panicked. They had been caught trying to leave the planet an hour earlier, their ship detained by royal order. "These individuals were carrying documents that confirm everything," the queen said. "Details of payments, agreements, and timelines, all pointing to one conclusion." Her voice hardened to steel. "Prince Hyun has committed treason against the crown and the people of the Valari Empire." Hyun's composure shattered. He looked around wildly, seeking allies, but found only faces of shock and disgust. The guards he had bribed were nowhere to be seen, replaced by loyalists who had been quietly positioned throughout the morning. "You can't do this!" he screamed. "I am of royal blood. I am next in line for the throne." "You were never next in line," Queen Sarah said coldly. "Even before my daughter returned, you were merely a footnote in the succession. And now," she gestured toward Do-Yon and Tae-Ho, "now there are heirs with truer hearts and stronger spirits than you could ever possess." She raised her hand, and guards moved to surround the fallen prince. "Take him, and the Korvac's conspirators. They will face justice for their crimes." As Hyun was dragged away, still shouting denials and threats, Queen Sarah turned to face the assembled nobles. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "Let it be known throughout the empire. Princess Yuna has returned to us. Her children, Do-Yon and Tai-Ho, are hereby recognized as members of the royal family, with all rights and protections that entails. Any who challenge this declaration challenge me." The chamber was silent for a heartbeat. Then, slowly, the noble houses began to rise. One by one, they bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Duyan felt tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Tae-ho was crying too, though he would probably deny it later. Queen Sarah walked to them and took their hands in hers. "Welcome to the family," she said softly. "Properly this time." 3 months had passed since the Grand Council. Spring had come to the Valari homeworld, bringing warm winds that made the crystal towers sing with gentle music. In the royal gardens, flowers bloomed in colors that had no names in human languages, and birds with feathers like liquid silver nested in trees older than human civilization. Princess Yuna stood at the center of the great amphitheater, facing her people for the first time in 28 years. Her treatment was complete. The color had returned to her skin, and the strength had returned to her body. She wore robes of deep blue and silver, the colors of her house, and a simple circlet of crystal stars rested on her hair. Millions of Valari had gathered to see her, filling the amphitheater and the surrounding streets and watching through broadcasts across the 12 star systems. They had come to see the lost princess, the woman who had been mourned as dead for nearly 3 decades. But more than that, they had come to understand. "People of the Valari," Yuna began, her voice carrying through the air. "I know there are questions you wish to ask. Where did I go? Why did I stay away? How could I abandon my duty, my blood, my home?" She paused, letting the silence build. "I did not abandon anything. I was lost, and I was found. When pirates attacked our diplomatic vessel, I would have died if not for a human ship that answered our distress call. They saved my life. They nursed me back to health. And in the months that followed, they showed me something I had never experienced before. They showed me freedom." A murmur went through the crowd. "In the Valari Empire, my life was planned from birth. Who I would marry, what role I would play, every decision made by others, every path already chosen. But among the humans, I was simply Yuna, not a princess. Not a piece on a political board, just a person, free to discover who I truly was. I fell in love with a man named Hajun. He was not royalty. He was not wealthy. He was a farmer who grew food for his community and helped anyone who needed help. He taught me that the measure of a person is not their title or their bloodline. It is the kindness they show to others and the courage they demonstrate when things are hard." Yuna's voice grew softer, but somehow carried even further. "We had 18 beautiful years together. We had 2 children who became the center of our world. And when he died, 5 years ago, he left me with the greatest gift anyone could give. A family built on love rather than politics." She turned slightly, and the crowd followed her gaze to where Do-yeon and Tai-ho stood at the edge of the stage. They were dressed in clothing that blended human and Valari styles, representing both halves of their heritage. "My children are not pure Valari. Their blood is mixed, their lifespans will be shorter than ours, and they grew up knowing nothing of palace protocol or noble traditions. But they carry something more valuable than pure blood. They carry their father's heart. When we arrived here 3 months ago, they were treated as outsiders, as threats, as something shameful. Yet when danger came, they did not run. They did not hide. They put themselves at risk to protect a grandmother who had shown them nothing but coldness. Because that is what Hajun taught them. Family does not give up on family, even when it is hard." Yuna walked across the stage to stand beside her children, taking each of their hands in hers. "I do not ask you to forget that I left. I do not ask you to pretend that my children are something they are not. I only ask you to see them as I see them, as the best of 2 worlds, as proof that different peoples can come together in love and create something beautiful." She raised her eyes to the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. My husband is gone, but his legacy lives in our children, and through them, perhaps a bridge can be built between Valari and humanity, not a bridge of politics or treaties, but a bridge of understanding, of respect, of the recognition that we are all children of the same universe, no matter the color of our skin or the length of our lives. The silence that followed was complete. Then, somewhere in the crowd, a single voice began to cheer. Others joined it. The sound grew and grew until the entire amphitheater shook with applause and shouts of welcome. Do-Yun felt tears running down her face. Beside her, Tae-ho was smiling so wide it looked like it might hurt. Their mother squeezed their hands, and for the first time since their father died, they felt truly complete. Later that evening, a smaller ceremony was held in the Queen's private chambers. Only family was present, along with old Yunbi, who had been rewarded for her loyalty with a position in the royal household. Queen Sarah stood before a holographic display showing images of Ha-Jun, taken from the files Do-Yeon had brought from Earth. She studied the face of the man who had stolen her daughter's heart. Warm brown eyes, a gentle smile, hands that showed the calluses of honest work. "Tell me more about him," the Queen said. And so they did. Do-Yeon told stories about his terrible jokes and his wonderful cooking. Tae-ho described how he taught them to fix broken machinery and never give up on a problem. Yuna spoke of their first meeting, their quiet wedding, the simple happiness of their life together. As she listened, something changed in the Queen's ancient face. The ice that had guarded her heart for 30 years continued to melt, revealing the warmth that had always been hidden beneath. "He sounds like someone I would have liked to know," she said finally. "He would have liked you too," Yuna said. "He always said that people who seem cold are usually just people who have been hurt. He would have tried to make you laugh. I have not laughed in a very long time. Then maybe it's time to start again." Queen Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, her lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "Perhaps you are right." In the weeks that followed, Do-Yeon accepted a position at the Imperial Science Academy, where her knowledge of both human and Valari biology made her a valuable researcher. Tae-ho began training with the Royal Guard, earning respect through his dedication and his willingness to learn. Both chose to remain in the Empire while maintaining connections to Earth, becoming living bridges between two peoples. But the most important changes happened in private moments. Queen Sarah learned to ask about her grandchildren's days instead of issuing commands. She attended Do-Yeon's first academic presentation and Tae-ho's graduation from basic training. She listened to stories about Ha-Jun and slowly came to understand why her daughter had loved him so completely. On the last night of spring, the family gathered on the palace balcony to watch the stars. Queen Sarah sat in the center, with Yuna on one side and her grandchildren on the other. The city spread out below them, crystal towers glowing softly in the starlight, and above, the infinite sky reminded them how small their troubles truly were. "Do you regret it?" the Queen asked her daughter. "The years away?" Yuna shook her head. "I regret the pain I caused you, but I do not regret the life I lived. It gave me everything I truly needed." "And you?" The Queen looked at Do-Yeon and Tae-ho. "Do you wish your mother had stayed among her own people?" Do-Yeon thought about it carefully. If her mother had stayed, she and Tae-ho would never have existed. Their father would have lived and died alone on a distant colony, never knowing the love that had filled his final years. "I think things happened the way they were supposed to," she said. "Maybe it took a long time for our family to be complete, but we're complete now, and that's what matters." Queen Sarah reached out and took Do-Yeon's hand on one side and Tae-ho's on the other. Yuna watched, finally at peace after so many years of uncertainty. 3 decades of silence, the Queen said softly. 3 decades of grief. And yet here, in the end, I found what I had lost. Not just a daughter, but a family larger and stronger than I ever imagined. The humans taught your bloodline something precious, Yunbi said from her place by the door. Something even 400 years of rule could not teach you. And what is that? That the heart's capacity to love is the only inheritance that truly matters. The Queen looked at her family, gathered around her under the eternal stars. Human and Valari. Old and young. Different in so many ways, yet bound together by something stronger than blood or politics, or the vast distances between worlds. Yes, she said quietly, I believe you may be right. And for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, Queen Sarah of the Valari Empire smiled.